Hello, my name is Mark Halliday. I'm the Director of Programmatic for JCDecaux UK. So I think what really stands out in creativity today is when you can really sort of tap into either sort of what is going on in the real world around cultural moments. It's also when you can use data in a really sort of creative way to understand context, because for me, the more context there is, the more relevance there is, and the more impact there is. Now in the UK, JCDecaux, we really sort of try and think of ourselves as pioneers of programmatic. And although we are at Cannes here, we also had our own awards a few weeks ago. So it's the third year of our awards, and we had around 350 people attend these back in May. And we've seen a lot of really interesting campaigns come through there as well. So some of the things which I talked about there are sort of contextual relevance and using data to make the messaging seem a lot more seamless would include our Grand Prix winner. So for L'Oréal Paris, they were a sponsor of Arsenal Football Club, and rather than trying to compete for attention around those match moments, instead they became part of the experience. So typically or historically, you may just see an ad for a shampoo in proximity to the station or to the stadium, sorry. But now they are actually using images of the players. They had a countdown timer counting down towards when the match was going to kick off. There was a score update. They used contextual moments from the football match to celebrate wins, hopefully wins after the matches. There's also cases where there's a really interesting case for Häagen-Dazs, and that's where they were able to use weather to optimize their sales. So when it was sunny, they used their ice creams which were on sticks, and when it was more overcast or colder, they reverted to the images around the Häagen-Dazs tubs of ice cream. So again, sort of using that real-time data to just optimize the creative. And then I think the last example which I'll mention is maybe around Costa Coffee. And around Christmas, they really tapped into different shopping moments. And so sort of teeing consumers up for a busy day of shopping in the morning, encouraging them to relax and put their bags down in the afternoon. So it feels, I think for me, creativity is where you're not fighting for attention, you're really earning it and being part of the consumers' lives and increasing relevance. I think tech should ideally be relatively invisible, and what it should ideally do is just open up the bounds of what creativity can offer to enhance the scope of creativity. So we're seeing this a lot more now with real-time activation, from the idea of coming up with a great idea and getting it live on the same day. Right now, we're in the middle of the World Cup. We are seeing so many ads coming out highlighting the World Cup, referencing results which have happened. Last night, it was England against Ghana, and one of our clients is using wordplay around the word Ghana. You're not gonna believe it that England drew. So that's really interesting, and the fact that you can be so real-time, so reactive, and tap into cultural moments is incredibly interesting. I think we're also seeing a lot more of a movement away from posters being a static place to display a brand message to being much more immersive. We are seeing definite increases in the adoption of dynamic creative optimization, and obviously technology there can open up huge creative opportunities. So there's a campaign that springs to mind for Uber Eats in the UK, and they tapped into 11 different cultural moments around Valentine's Day, around Ramadan, around Mother's Day. They overlaid that with over 1,000 different audience profiles around the UK, and ultimately I think they had 5,009 different creative variables. Now manually, it's so hard to do that, but now with programmatic and with sort of seamless adoption of DCO tools, yeah, it really opens up what the creative potential, and again I'll use the word again, but to go back to relevance, and more relevance of more attention and more power. there's a few that are going on. I think with programmatic being real-time, leveraging real-time data, there has been a trend over the years where a lot of the DSPs will have sort of off-the-shelf solutions to be able to trigger a campaign when it's hot, when it's cold, when it's raining, when there's pollution, when there's high UV. But we're seeing more variety coming out in triggers now. One of the entries for our awards, which we ran with Displayce actually, was to trigger a campaign when the electrical grid, the energy grid in the UK, was running lower carbon intensity. Now this was a campaign to promote the use of electric vehicles run by the government. So the messaging around more sustainable living and actually the execution of only going live when the electrical grid was using below average amounts of energy is incredibly powerful. We've now determined that the amount of energy saved by adopting that approach is the same as 300,000 kettles being boiled simultaneously, or driving from London to Rome and back 5 times. And that was for a relatively small campaign, so you can kind of see that how powerful that is. We're also seeing other data coming into campaigns as well, things like ANPR data, which is automatic number plate recognition. So we're seeing this where there's an energy company who are able to identify when there are more electric cars coming in to advertise their services around electric vehicle charging. So that's certainly one key trend that we're seeing. We're also seeing that there's more of maybe like a sort of a flywheel effect where brands are leveraging earned insights and earned material and putting that into their creatives. So we saw one for Hewlett-Packard where they were taking Reddit feedback and putting that into the actual ad itself. So for consumers, it just maybe feels a little bit more real. But we're also seeing a lot more omnichannel storytelling as well. Outdoor is inherently a one-to-many channel. Of course, you can use data to be more precise in the audiences you're targeting, but we are seeing a lot more sort of connective storytelling across different channels. There was a great one we did for P&O Ferries where they were using outdoor to reach a broad audience, and then they looked to retarget them then with digital display and with audio and connected TV. So there's some of the interesting things that we're seeing are sort of around creativity and storytelling using data. There are many advantages of programmatic as a route to market. I think the 3 that we are talking most loudly about at the moment as the advantages are, number 1 is around audience efficiency. If you're adopting a broad traditional approach to out of home, you're going to be on all day, every day with a dedicated share of time. But with programmatic, because we're bidding impression by impression, we can be much more precise. So it's looking at things like leveraging Cirium data, which is using real-time flight data to be able to target people that way. So that could be a flight lands at London Heathrow from China, so you can actually greet people in Mandarin as a language on the creative ads. If the flight is delayed by 2 hours, that's all automatically updated. So really thinking about how we can use brilliant data to be super efficient with audience efficiency. The second area is all really about contextual relevance. I talked earlier about real-time triggers, whether that's pollen counts or weather or what the traffic levels are. Like traffic is a really interesting area where we've seen campaigns in the past where train companies have directly messaged people in traffic to say, wouldn't you rather be on the train to get to your destination? You could be in Manchester in 1 hour and 32 minutes. So that's super interesting around contextual relevance. And again, to sort of echo a point I made earlier, it's about trying to, the more relevant you are, the more you're rather than sort of fighting for attention, the more you're earning that attention, the better, the more impactful I think your ads will be. And then I think the third area is all around that sort of omnichannel story, not thinking about out of home in isolation, realizing that through programmatic, you can have that creative storytelling. Another thing really I think around that is that there's a real multiplier effect that comes from out of home. Out of home can really connect the real world and the digital world. We've seen countless case studies where people who have been exposed to outdoor messages are much more likely to click on a display ad. They're much more likely to listen to an audio ad, to see a video ad. And all of this has an impact which generally reduces the cost per acquisition. We know that
there are different behaviours when people are on the move, that 38% of all searches have much more intent for purchase when they are on the move. So yeah, that's where out of home can really tap into other channels. We're also seeing brilliant work around how search data is being used to both power creative and power the targeting. There's a great campaign we did for VO5 where they're able to identify where they should be placing their campaign using search trend data, and then optimizing their campaigns where they saw search uplift as a result of exposure. So I guess it's really thinking about how out of home can amplify and be a catalyst to other channels. The language we're using at the moment is that programmatic out of home is the secret sauce to really add flavor to the rest of your omnichannel campaign.